Claire Beaumont stood just inside the grand hall and took a slow breath. The room was alive with soft music, gentle laughter, and the tinkling of glasses. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, casting warm light over every polished surface. Walls draped in cream-colored fabric made the space seem both elegant and comforting. Claire's pale blue dress felt smooth against her skin. She had chosen it carefully. The color reminded her of clear sky on a spring morning, a sign of new beginnings. She smoothed the folds of the skirt for what felt like the 100th time, making sure nothing looked out of place. She felt her heart beat fast. This night was more than a simple charity event. It was a chance to show her family she could make her own choices. Her parents and her aunt and uncle believed she needed to follow the path they set for her. They had plans for a certain type of life, with a certain type of man by her side. Claire had tried to explain that her dreams were different, but they would not listen. Now, she stood here, determined to prove that she could stand tall on her own. She took another quiet breath and let her shoulders relax. A soft breeze from the air conditioner brushed her cheek. She leaned against the cool marble pillar and watched the guests move around her. Men in dark suits talked quietly in small groups. Women in bright dresses carried glasses of champagne or wine. Waiters drifted between the clusters, offering trays of odd d'oeuvres. The scent of smoked salmon on crackers mixed with delicate pastries. Gentle strains of piano floated from a corner where a musician played. Every detail was perfect, almost too perfect for her own comfort. Her eyes swept across the room and paused on one man. He stood with his back to the far wall, chatting with 4 or 5 friends. He wore a simple black suit with a crisp white shirt and no tie. His shirt collar was open, and that small looseness gave him an easy air. He laughed and waved his hand. As he spoke, in that moment Claire saw the light catch on his dark skin, and her breath caught slightly. His smile was warm and easy, not forced. His eyes were bright beneath the lights, and they shone with kindness. She remembered his name. Darius Hill. He had grown up nearby and gone on to study community work at the State University. Now he led local efforts to help young people find jobs and build skills. He was known for his warm heart and clear mind. Some people called him a hero here, quietly working to make life better for his neighbors. Claire had read about his projects in the community newsletter. She had admired him from a distance. Now here he was, real and alive, laughing with friends. She did not know. Claire felt a gentle tug in her chest every time their eyes met. She wondered what it would be like to say hello. But she did not know him well. They had only exchanged polite words at a meeting months ago. Tonight, she needed something more. She needed a partner by her side. Her aunt and uncle expected her to arrive with her new fiancé, someone from their circle, someone they approved of. If they saw her standing alone, they might think she had no one. That would give them another reason to push their plans on her. Claire did not want that. She wanted them to see her standing with someone strong, someone kind. She wanted to show she could choose her own path. She lifted her chin and took a few steps forward. Her high heels clicked softly on the marble floor. She reminded herself to speak slowly when she reached him, to smile when her voice shook, to breathe if her heart pounded too loudly in her ears. She silently told herself she could do it. She was ready. The cool air of the hall felt smooth on her skin, and she let it calm her. She walked toward him, passing under a garland of white flowers that hung above the entrance to the main area. A gentle breeze stirred the petals, making them dance. She thought of how delicate flowers could stand through strong wind if their stems were rooted well enough. She decided then she would be like that flower. She would bend if she had to, but she would not break. With each step, her nerves wove a tight braid of fear and excitement. She saw Darius turn slightly. His dark eyes found hers. For a moment, the noise of the gala faded. She thought she heard only the muffled beat of her own pulse. Then he smiled in greeting. It was a polite smile, friendly and open. Claire's heart eased a little. She tricked herself into believing she belonged here just as much as any other guest. She reminded herself that she deserved a partner who cared about her dreams. Darius's laughter rang out to his friends again, but this time he glanced in her direction. Claire reached out with one hand to gently brush a stray lock of hair behind her ear. She felt the cool satin of the dress just across her chest. To steady herself, she cleared her throat softly and stepped closer. The polite smile she practiced materialized on her lips, though she felt a flutter of nerves under her skin. He noticed. Her approach paused mid-sentence and looked at her fully. His friend's words trailed off. The group turned to watch. For a moment, Claire felt all their eyes on her. She could hear a soft hush in her mind. Her own voice felt small, but she forced it out. "Darius?" she said. Her voice was gentle, but her heart thundered. He nodded. "Claire, good evening," he replied. His voice was warm. She felt it wrap around her like a soft blanket. "I wasn't expecting to see you here. How are you?" She took another breath. Steadied by his kindness, "I'm well, thank you," she answered. "Actually, I have a strange favor to ask." He raised one eyebrow, concern flickering in his eyes. Claire let the moment stretch, surprised by how open she felt. She told herself there was no turning back now. She swallowed and spoke the words she had practiced. "Could you pretend to be my husband just for tonight?" The words fell into the air between them. For a heartbeat, the room seemed to pause. The laughter dimmed. Claire's cheeks warmed. She bit her lip, afraid she had made a mistake. But Darius stood still. He looked at her with steady eyes, gentle but curious. He was not angry or amused, seemed to understand that something really mattered to her. His friends shifted, watching them both. A waiter passed with a tray of tiny quiches, and one slipped from the tray onto the marble floor unseen. Darius's attention stayed on Claire. He took a slow breath before he spoke. His voice was quiet. "Why do you need that?" he asked. Claire felt the question press on her like a quiet force. She caught a small bubble of fear rising in her throat, but she held on to her courage. She explained in a few soft sentences that her family expected to see her as a married woman by the end of the evening. She said that without proof, her aunt and uncle would cut her off, leave her with no support. She spoke of how she had worked hard to find her own way, and how she needed this one moment to make them believe. Darius listened as she talked, nodding. In understanding, his dark eyes never left hers. Claire felt herself grow still, filled with relief that he was not judging her. She felt a warm hope bloom in her chest. Maybe she could do this. Maybe he would help. When she finished, silence fell softly around them. Guests moved again, their voices rising. Darius gave a small smile, reached out one hand and offered it. To her, "All right," he said warmly. "I will help you." Claire's heart opened wide. She felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She felt brave. She felt grateful. She slipped her hand into his firm grasp, and they stood together at the edge of the gala, ready to face her family as one. Claire's heart still raced from the moment she had asked Darius to pretend to be her husband. She led him a short distance away from the crowd near a grand marble staircase. The soft glow of the chandeliers above cast golden patterns on the polished steps, and the faint hum of conversation filled the air. Claire paused at the foot of the stairs, smoothing the front of her dress and taking a quiet breath. Her pulse echoed in her ears as she waited for Darius to speak. Darius watched her with a kind look on his face, straightened his jacket, then offered a gentle nod. "All right," he said again, his voice calm, "but I need to understand everything. How much do I need to know? What story shall we tell?" His question was careful, polite. Claire felt a wave of relief. He was not angry or confused. He wanted to help her get this right. A low voice, Claire explained what she could. She said they were married for 7 years, since they had met at a friend's wedding in a small town 2 states away. They'd built a quiet life together, she said, with 2 sons who were now away at boarding school. She spoke softly, adding details so their story would sound real. She told him her maiden name, the date they had married, in a courthouse ceremony on a cool autumn day, and the color of the bridesmaids' dresses, pale yellow silk that fluttered in the wind. She shared how they lived in a 3-bedroom house on Elm Street, where they had planted roses along the front porch. Darius listened closely. He repeated each fact back to her, checking that he understood. Claire felt her shoulders relax a little. as he described their pretend sons, Marcus, 16, with a quiet love for books, and James, 14, who played the trumpet in his school band. She smiled at how natural his voice sounded, giving life to the characters she had imagined. She watched him. She felt a small flutter of excitement. The lie they were creating was vivid and warm, and somehow it made her feel closer to him in that moment. They practiced how they would greet her aunt and uncle. Claire would introduce Darius as her devoted husband, would place his hand on her lower back in a gentle gesture of support. They would walk together through the main doors of the ballroom and pause for photographs. Claire imagined the flash of cameras, the click of shutters, and the polite murmur of approval from her family. In her mind, she saw her aunt nod with satisfaction, her uncle raise his glass in a proud toast. And in that moment, Claire would stand tall and confident, no longer alone. Darius smiled as he guided her through the story. He suggested a small change when her aunt asked about their life. He would mention how much he admired Claire's work as a volunteer at the local shelter. Claire liked that detail. It fit her real passion for helping others and made their story sound even truer. She thanked him, feeling a thrill that they were shaping this lie together like a real partnership. They moved closer to the main floor of the hall. Music changed to a slower waltz, and couples slipped onto the dance floor. A hush seemed to fall over the room as the dancers moved in time to the gentle melody. Claire felt a surge of nervous energy. This was her moment. Looked at Darius, whose dark eyes met hers with quiet understanding. Without a word, he offered his arm. Claire placed her hand on his, and they stepped onto the edge of the dance floor. They moved as if they truly belonged. Darius guided her gently, his hand resting at the small of her back. Claire felt a comforting warmth spread through her chest. Her nerves eased as she followed his lead. The other couples gave them a respectful distance, and soon they were surrounded by whispers of admiration. Claire could hear someone say, "What a lovely couple," and another guest murmur, "They look so happy together." She held her head high, letting the praise wash over her. In that moment, she almost believed their own story. Moments of dancing, Claire felt Darius's grip loosen. He guided her off the floor toward a small seating area lined with plush chairs. She sank into one of the seats, smoothing her dress. Darius sat beside her, his posture relaxed, his profile by the soft lamplight, noticing the gentle curve of his jaw and the easy confidence in his bearing. Again, she felt her heart flutter. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. His tone was gentle, caring. Claire nodded, then laughed softly. "I'm fine," she said. "I know it sounds strange, but this is the only way. My aunt and uncle believe they can decide my future. I need them to think I've made the right choice. After tonight, they won't push me into that arranged engagement." She looked away for a moment, her eyes bright. "I've worked so hard to stand on my own. I can't let them take that away." Darius reached out and touched her hand, his thumb brushing gently against her palm. "I understand," he said. "Sometimes family expectations can feel like chains." His voice held genuine sympathy. Claire closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth of his hand. It felt real comforting. She opened her eyes and looked at him. "Thank you," she whispered. They sat in silence for a few seconds, listening to the distant chatter and the soft clink of glasses. The moment felt precious, as if the world had paused just for them. Claire realized how much she had wished for someone who understood her struggles. In that instant, Darius was more than a stranger helping with a lie. He was a friend who cared. She cleared her throat and reminded herself of the plan. "We should move on," she said softly. "They will notice if I stay here too long." Darius nodded, letting go of her hand, but staying close. They rose together and walked back toward the center of the room. They passed a long table filled with desserts, tiny tarts topped with fresh berries, chocolate eclairs dusted with powdered sugar, and delicate macarons in pastel colors. A waiter offered them each a small plate. Claire accepted one, picking up a raspberry tart. The sweetness was bright on her tongue. Darius took a macaroon and smiled at her. "Careful," he teased gently. They're dangerously delicious." Claire laughed. "That's good," she said. "I needed something sweet tonight." She took another bite and let the sugar calm her nerves. She glanced around for her aunt and uncle. Across the room, she spotted her aunt in a deep red gown, talking to an older couple near the bar. Her uncle stood with them, nodding and laughing. Claire motioned to Darius, and they walked over side by side. As they approached, her aunt looked up and smiled. "Claire, darling," she called. "And who is this handsome gentleman?" Claire felt her breath catch. She gave Darius's hand a quick squeeze, and he offered a warm smile. "Aunt Margot, Uncle James, I'd like you to meet my husband, Darius Hill," Claire said, her voice. "Steady, Darius. This is my aunt and uncle." She tilted her head toward them. Aunt Margot's eyes sparkled with approval. "Oh, how lovely," she exclaimed. She reached out to touch Claire's arm, and then offered a hand to Darius. "Welcome to the family, dear." Uncle James raised his glass in a small toast. "To the happy couple," he said. Claire felt tears of relief prick her eyes as Darius stood proudly beside her. Their story was working. Claire's family believed it. In that moment, Claire knew she had done it. She had stood up for herself and chosen her own path, even if it was with a pretend partner. The three adults chatted for a few moments. Claire answered polite questions about their children and their life together. Darius offered thoughtful responses, weaving the details she had shared into warm and believable answers. Claire watched her aunt's smile grow wider and her uncle's nod grow firmer. She felt a surge of hope blossom in her chest. Maybe this was the first step toward a life she truly wanted, one built on her own choices, with people who cared about her happiness. When the conversation shifted to another topic, Darius gave Claire a quick, reassuring glance. She smiled back, feeling safe in his understanding. The crowd drifted around them, but Claire no longer felt alone. She had her family's respect. And beside her stood a man who was willing to help her hand, who truly saw her for who she was. Her heart felt lighter than it had in months. The night was still young, and Claire knew there were more challenges ahead, but tonight she was ready to face them, with Darius at her side, pretending to be her husband and, in a way, showing her the real possibility of standing up for herself. ChatGPT said. They moved side by side to the grand double doors at the entrance of the main hall. Darius kept one hand lightly on Claire's back, a gentle guide as they stepped into the soft glow of the chandelier light. Dozens of pairs turned to look at them. The music softened for a moment, and the quiet rustle of silk and taffeta rose like a wave around them. Claire's pulse fluttered, but she straightened her spine and lifted her chin. She clasped her free hand around Darius's arm, feeling the warmth of his suit jacket through her fingertips. As they passed a cluster of familiar faces, Claire heard quiet murmurs. "There they are," someone whispered. "They look so happy." She imagined Aunt Margot standing just beyond the white roses by the buffet. Claire slipped her eyes down the line of guests, searching for her family. When she found them, her heart gave a little leap. Her aunt stood beside Uncle James, her long dark gown sweeping the floor. Both were smiling, nodding in approval at the sight of Claire and her husband. Darius gave Claire a small, encouraging smile. "You ready?" he asked softly, as if they shared a private secret. Claire nodded, and together they crossed the carpet toward her family. Each step felt like a promise, like they were opening a door to a new life. Claire's breath steadied. She reminded herself, this was her decision. She was choosing her own path. She was standing tall, and she had support, not real support yet, but the warmth of possibility. They reached Aunt Margot first. The older woman swept forward, her eyes bright with pride. She touched Claire's arm, then offered her hand to Darius. "Welcome, dear," she said, her voice smooth and warm. Claire felt tears of relief prick her eyes for a moment. Darius took the aunt's hand with grace, bowing his head in polite greeting. Claire saw Uncle James lift his glass in a small toast. "To the happy couple," he said, his deep voice carrying across the room. A soft chorus of applause rose up around them. Claire answered the polite questions that followed, introducing Darius as her husband of 7 years. She spoke of their sweet home on Elm Street, of the roses she planted each spring. Darius added a detail about how Claire often cared for the sick shelter animals in her spare time. Their voices blended in harmony, as if they truly had practiced. This life together, Claire felt a spark of pride. She was telling her own story at last, even though it was wrapped in a small lie. Then Aunt Margot lifted a perfectly arched eyebrow and asked, "Tell me, dear, how are your sons doing this year?" Marcus at 16 must be growing fast. Claire's throat tightened. She swallowed hard and forced a smile. She had invented Marcus and James so quickly, but now she needed details. She glanced at Darius. He paused just long enough to give her a moment to think. Claire cleared her throat. "They're both doing well," she said. "Marcus loves his literature class. He's reading poetry every weekend. And James has joined the school band. He's really proud of his trumpet." Darius jumped in, nodding. "Yes, they send postcards from school. Marcus wrote about a poem he learned by heart. He read it to the class. And James was in the spring concert last month. His words sounded warm and true." Claire felt the lie strengthen like wet cement. The more they filled it in, the more solid it seemed. Guests nearby exchanged approving glances. Claire let out a quiet sigh of relief. Her aunt beamed. Aunt Margot's gaze softened. "That is wonderful," she said. "I do miss those boys. You must send me more letters from them." Claire smiled. "Of course I'll ask them to write soon." She spoke easily, though her mind raced. How would they keep this up for the rest of the night? How many small details might they forget? But Darius reached out and touched her elbow lightly. His hand was steady, and Claire felt herself calm again. A waiter drifted by with a tray of champagne flutes. Claire caught one and raised it with her family. Darius did the same for himself. "To family," Claire said softly, clinking her glass against her aunt's. The tart pop of the cork, the soft whoosh of the bubbly coming up. The glass these sounds felt like real life. Claire sipped, letting the sweetness settle at the back of her throat. She looked at Darius. His eyes were kind, filled with the same hopeful spark she felt in her own heart. They moved on to greet neighbors and other family friends. Each time someone asked about their boys or their home or Claire's work, Darius offered a thoughtful answer. Claire added her own small details. How Marcus kept a journal. How James had learned to cook simple meals in the school's home EC class. They wove these facts like threads in a tapestry, each one making the story more believable. Claire felt a thrill when she heard someone comment, "They make such a lovely family." She allowed herself a small smile. But then a new challenge appeared. A family friend, Mrs. Whitaker, asked, "Do your sons have any hobbies beyond school?" As her tone was friendly but curious. Claire felt a flutter of panic. She glanced at Darius. He paused before he replied. He seemed to search his mind, then spoke with gentle confidence. "Marcus has a small collection of vintage stamps. He started it last summer after we visited the city museum. James loves to sketch. He draws buildings and nature scenes in his sketchbook." His voice was calm. Claire realized he had picked up one of the details she had shared about Marcus's quiet love for books and turned it into a hobby. Claire nodded in agreement. "They both love quiet things. We encourage creativity in our home," she said. The room filled with soft laughter, and Mrs. Whitaker leaned in. "That is lovely," she said. "They're fortunate." Claire let the praise wash over her. She felt the illusion hold strong. She thanked Mrs. Whitaker and turned to greet others. After a few more greetings, they reached a tall mirror near the coat racks. Claire paused and looked at their reflection. For a moment, she saw something in Darius's eyes that surprised her. Admiration, perhaps even a spark of real affection. She felt her cheeks warm. In the glass, she watched them side by side, both smiling, both poised. She wondered what it would feel like if the story they told had roots in truth, but she had no time for daydreams now. She needed to finish the charade. Suddenly, Uncle James stepped forward. His expression turned serious. "Claire," he said, lowering his voice so only they could hear, "I saw your cousin Emily tonight. She says her children will be attending Elm Street Elementary next year. Is that the same school your boys go to?" Claire's heart thumped. Aunt Margot and Mrs. Whitaker waited expectantly. Claire took a steadying breath. She met Darius's eyes. Without blinking, she replied, "Oh, Emily's twins are just a grade below Marcus. They always loved playing together at recess. And Elm Street has such a good music program. James adores his teachers there." Darius nodded in agreement. "Yes, and they have added new science labs this year. Marcus wants to try the after-school program on astronomy." His voice was calm and convincing. Claire felt the tension melt. Her father might have worried about these small connections, but Darius's details were enough to satisfy Uncle James. The older man relaxed, patting Claire's hand. "Good," he said. "I'm glad to hear it." The group moved on, chatting about upcoming school fairs and neighborhood events. Claire realized they had passed one test, but the night was still young. More questions would come, or details would need answers. But standing there in the golden light, surrounded by polite smiles and warm chatter, Claire felt a new sense of confidence. She turned to Darius with a soft smile. He gave her a small nod, as if to say, "We can do this." And in that moment, Claire believed him. They walked back into the crowd, arm in arm, two actors playing their parts in for the first time. Claire felt she might step into a real life of her own making. ChatGPT said. A soft hush fell over the guests as Aunt Margot stepped forward beside the long table draped in white linen. The candles flickered in crystal holders, and their flames cast dancing reflections across the silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. Claire felt a flutter in her chest. This was the moment they had practiced. Darius, standing beside her, gave her a quick, reassuring glance. She lifted her glass of champagne, the bubbles catching the light like tiny stars. "Dear friends." "Family," Aunt Margot began, her voice carrying easily across the room. "Tonight we celebrate not only the wonderful work of this charity, but also the joy of family." She paused, and the pianist shifted to a gentle chord. "I would like to propose a toast to my niece Claire and her devoted husband, Darius Hill." A warm cheer rose from the crowd. Heads turned to focus on Claire and Darius as Aunt Margot held her glass high. Claire's heart thundered. She straightened her back and met Darius's eyes. For a moment, she saw something soft, their support, kindness, perhaps even pride. She drew in a breath. This speech was her chance to show her family who she really was, beyond their expectations, beyond the walls they had built around her. She let the pride of her own voice fill her chest as she spoke. "I feel very lucky tonight," Claire began, her voice steady, though her heart raced. "Lucky to be with all of you who have supported me, and lucky to share this evening with my husband, Darius." She turned to him, and he offered a small smile that warmed her more than any silk dress or polished marble floor. She pressed on. "Darius, you have been my partner in every step of our journey. You have shown me strength when I was afraid, and kindness when I felt alone. You have reminded me that love is a choice we make each day, through laughter and through challenges." A buzz of soft approval rippled through the audience. Claire saw her aunt's eyes glisten in the flickering candlelight. Claire continued, drawing from her real passions. "Together, we have built a home filled with books and music. Our sons, Marcus and James, have found their own voices through poetry and trumpet, guided by the love we share. We learn from each other every day, in small moments like quiet mornings, reading the newspaper together, and evenings spent playing the piano in our living room." She let her gaze sweep across the familiar faces of family friends. "That is what family means. To me, sharing our joys, our hopes, and our dreams." Claire's voice gained strength. She spoke of real-life lessons, how Darius had encouraged her to volunteer at the local shelter, and how she had found purpose in caring for frightened animals. She spoke of the times when money was tight and they had faced every challenge with humor and grace. She saw people nodding, moved by her sincerity. She felt the lie grow roots in her heart, but deeper still, she felt the truth of her own courage shining through. When she finished, a hush settled for a heartbeat, and then applause broke out, glasses clinked. People smiled at her with respect. Aunt Margot's proud eyes shone. Claire allowed herself a small, private smile. She felt powerful, seen, real. Then, as the applause died down, Claire heard a familiar voice from near the doorway. "Claire, What is going on here? Her fiancé Oliver stood framed by the tall double doors. He wore his dark suit and a look of confusion mixed with hurt. His gray-blue eyes scanned the scene. Her family gathered around. Darius standing close with his arm at Claire's back, and the guests applauding her heartfelt words. Claire's heart jolted like a trapped bird. She felt the room tilt. Oliver strode forward, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. The pianist's gentle chord ended mid-note. A ripple of surprise swept through the crowd. Claire's aunt frowned, faces turned, conversations hushed to whispers. Claire felt a hot flush rise in her cheeks. "Claire, why are you calling him husband?" Oliver's voice was loud enough for all to hear. His tone was a mixture of anger and pain. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze fixed on her. Claire's heart pounded. She glanced at Darius. He held his ground, his calm presence like a rock. Beside her, Claire felt a fierce protectiveness rise inside her for this unexpected ally. Aunt Margot stepped between them. "Oliver, please," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of authority and distress. "Tonight is about Claire's happiness. Let her celebrate." But Oliver shook his head, his jaw tight. "No, Margot. This is my fiancé standing there with another man, claiming he's her husband. I deserve an explanation." Claire's breath caught. The room spun with the tension of his question. She looked at her father, who stood behind Aunt Margot, his expression stern yet puzzled. Claire felt tears burn her eyes, not for herself, but for the shock in Oliver's voice. She had promised him honesty when they got engaged. But this night, it was about freeing herself from false promises. She swallowed, feeling her throat constrict. Darius squeezed her back gently. "Claire and I are celebrating differently tonight," he said, his voice calm yet firm. Her family needs to see her strong, independent, and happy. That is what we wanted to show. His eyes met Claire's, and she saw understanding there, not mockery. He turned to Oliver. "I am not your rival, sir. I only stand here to support Claire." Oliver's eyes narrowed. "Support," he repeated. "Is this all a game to you?" "Claire's been honest with me for months." Claire shook her head, tears spilling free now. She set down her glass on the nearby table. The champagne sloshed gently and caught the candlelight before stilling in the narrow glass. She stepped forward, her dress whispering against the floor. "Oliver, listen," she began, her voice shaking but clear. "I'm sorry. I can't be the person you want me to be. I asked Darius for help tonight because I needed to show my family that I can stand on my own. I needed them to understand that I make my own choices." A murmur rose from the guests. Oliver looked at her, his hurt plain on his face. "Choices," he repeated. "He chose to lie to me, to lie to everyone." Claire lifted her chin, feeling a fierce spark. "I chose to find my path," she said quietly. "I chose to live for myself." She glanced at Darius, who nodded. Claire turned back to Oliver. "I can't marry you." The words hung heavy in the air. Oliver's face paled. Aunt Margot gasped. Her father opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The guests shifted, creating a small circle around the four of them. Claire, Darius, Oliver, and Aunt Margot. The candles flickered, and the silver trays waited untouched. Claire felt raw and exposed, but also free. Oliver closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. "You're giving up on us?" His voice trembled. Claire shook her head. "I'm giving up on a future I never wanted." She glanced at Darius. He stepped closer, placing his hand over hers in a gentle gesture of solidarity. Claire felt warmth spread through her. She had made her choice. It wasn't about Darius or Oliver, or even her family. It was about herself. Oliver looked at Darius's hand on Claire's. Then he looked back at Claire. "That's what you want," he said quietly, turning away. Walked back through the double doors, without another word. The music began again, hesitant and soft, as if unsure of its place in this new world. The guests murmured among themselves, but no one cheered. The hush that followed was heavy with surprise. Claire stood still, feeling the weight of the moment settle around her. Aunt Margot reached for her arm. "Claire, dear," she said in a small voice. Claire looked at her aunt. She saw confusion and fear in her eyes, but Claire felt calm. She held her aunt's hand and smiled gently. "Aunt Margot, I'm still your niece," she said softly. "I'm still grateful for your love." She turned to the guests. "Thank you all for celebrating with me tonight." Her voice was quiet, but carried across the hall. Then Darius stepped forward. He lifted his glass in a small salute. "To truth and to new beginnings," he said. Claire felt a thrill. Guests followed his lead, raising their glasses. Champagne sparkled in the soft light. Claire met Darius's eyes and saw something gentle and hopeful. She felt a warmth in her chest, not from the bubbles, but from knowing she had taken her first step toward a life of her own choosing. The night was far from over, but Claire knew she had found her courage on a friend who truly saw her. Claire slipped through the heavy oak doors of the grand hall and into the cool night air. The garden beyond was quiet and still, lit only by a few soft lanterns hanging from the low branches of an old oak tree. The scent of jasmine drifted on, the breeze mingling with the faint perfume of roses that climbed a nearby trellis. Claire drew in a slow breath, letting the calm of the night wash over her racing thoughts. She felt Darius close behind her, his presence solid and reassuring. They walked along a narrow stone path, each step echoing softly against the smooth stones. Claire's heels clicked in a steady rhythm. But she no longer noticed the sound only, the feeling of relief and freedom that bloomed in her chest. She had spoken her truth, faced her family, and chosen her own path. Now, under the quiet sky, she felt lighter than she had in months. Darius paused beside a small fountain. Moonlight glanced off the water, creating soft ripples that danced across the marble edge. He reached out and touched the cool stone, his reflection wavering in the fountain's surface. Claire stood near him, her dress rustling gently in the night breeze. They did not speak at first. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the unspoken bond they had forged tonight. After a moment, Claire broke the quiet. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying in the stillness. She turned to face him. The lanterns cast warm light on his face, and for a moment she saw every line, every shadow, as if she was seeing him clearly for the first time. His dark eyes held kindness and something else, a gentle curiosity. "I only did what you asked," Darius replied, though his tone held no hint of obligation. "I'm glad you trusted me." He brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and his fingers brushed her cheek. Claire closed her eyes at the touch. It felt honest, unlike the pretend gestures from earlier in the evening. Claire swallowed hard. She looked away from the fountain toward the curve of the garden path. Beyond it, she could see the lights of the ballroom shining through the windows. Music floated on the air, distant and muffled. It reminded her of the divide between the world she had left behind and the world she was stepping into now. "I was so afraid," Claire admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid my family would never see me as more than what they expected. Afraid I would lose everything, my home, my support, even the chance to live my own life." He paused, gathering courage. "Tonight, you gave me something I never had before. You gave me the strength to stand up for myself." Darius turned to her, his hand still resting lightly on her arm. "You had that strength inside you all along," he said. "I just reminded you of it." His words were simple, but they carried weight. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them away, determined not to let emotion make her voice shake. He continued, "I have seen you work hard for others, volunteering, helping at the shelter, caring for those who had no voice. You have always lived by your own values, even when no one else understood. That takes courage. Claire felt warmth spread through her chest. It was one thing to hear praise in the ballroom. It was another to hear it here, alone, under the moonlit sky. Claire took a small step closer. "I want to thank you properly," she said. "Not just for tonight, but for helping me see who I am." She looked up at him, meeting his gaze. "I don't know what happens next," she added, her voice honest. "But I want to move forward with my own choices." Darius nodded, as if he had been waiting to hear those words. He offered his hand to her, palm up. Claire hesitated for only a moment before placing her own hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. They stood there together. For a long moment, two hands linked, two hearts beating in quiet understanding. "I'm not sure what comes next either," Darius admitted. "But I want you to know that you're not alone. If you ever need a friend or anything else, I will be here." His words felt like a promise, soft but genuine. Claire's chest tightened with a mix of gratitude and something tender she had not expected to feel tonight. First real smile she had given in months. It lit up her face in the soft lantern glow. "Thank you," she said again, but this time her voice held hope rather than relief. "I would like that." She released his hand and stepped back, as if pulling in a small breath of space between them. She wanted to remember this moment clearly, every line, every detail. She looked at the path leading back to the hall. "I should go back inside," she said. "I need to face whatever comes next with my family." She paused and glanced over her shoulder at the fountain and the trees. "But I'm glad I had this moment first." Darius nodded. "I understand," he said softly. "I'll walk you to the doors." They began to move together, feet treading the stone path in the lantern light. The hush of the night seemed to hold them gently, as if giving space for their thoughts. Claire felt grounded in a way she never had before. She no longer felt trapped by her family's expectations. She felt in control, ready to face whatever they would say. As they neared the oak doors, Claire stopped again. She turned to Darius, hesitating for a brief moment. Then she reached up and brushed the edge of his lapel. A light, real gesture, no pretense this time. Darius met her eyes. Claire saw warmth there, and something else. Admiration, perhaps even a spark of something deeper. "I should," Claire began, her voice soft. She took a breath. "I should say goodbye." Her heart fluttered. She feared how those words would feel once spoken. Darius looked at her hand on his suit, then at her face. He nodded slowly. "I'm grateful for tonight," he said.
"Thank you for trusting me."
He took a small step closer and lifted her hand to his lips in a respectful gesture. Claire's breath caught. The touch was gentle, respectful, and full of warmth. When he released her hand, Claire felt a small ache. She had grown attached to this new sense of freedom, this new possibility. But she reminded herself of the promise she had made to herself and to her budding courage. Pressed her lips into a quick smile and stepped back. Darius watched her for a moment, his eyes soft in the lantern glow. Then he turned and walked away, hands in his pockets, head held high. Claire watched his figure fade into the shadows of the garden path. She felt a quiet sadness at his departure, but also a fierce pride swelling in her chest. Claire turned, back to the oak doors of the hall. The windows glowed warmly, and she imagined her family waiting inside, expecting her return. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. The jasmine scent filled her senses, a reminder of the nights. Gentle magic. She stepped forward, pushed open the heavy door, and re-entered the ballroom. Inside, the music had shifted to a soft waltz. Her aunt and uncle stood to greet her, concern on their faces. "Ah!" Claire met their eyes calmly. For the first time, she felt unafraid. "Back," she said simply. Her voice was clear, steady, full of the woman she had discovered tonight. Aunt Margot reached for her hand. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked gently. Claire nodded. "I am," she said. "I'm more certain than ever." She looked around the room at the familiar faces, friends, neighbors, family all, waiting quietly. Claire smiled. The next hours passed in polite conversation and farewells. Claire answered questions about her future with calm confidence. She no longer felt pressured by expectations. She spoke about her plans studying again at the volunteer center, traveling for a week to clear her mind, and perhaps even visiting the shelter where she had worked. Each word felt honest and true. When the night finally wound down, Claire found her sister waiting by the coat rack. Her sister slipped an arm through hers and leaned close. "We're wonderful," she said, her voice low. "I've never seen you so sure of yourself." Claire returned the smile. "Thank you," she said. Her sister gave a small laugh. "You're coming home with me, aren't you?" Claire nodded. "Yes," she said. "Home with family and my own terms." Outside in the cool air, Claire slipped into her coat. She felt content, calm, ready. As her sister drove her away, Claire thought of Darius walking alone under the lanterns. She felt a gentle hope for what might come next. Tonight, she had reclaimed her life. She had found her voice, and though she did not know what tomorrow would bring, Claire felt one thing clearly. She would continue to choose her own path. Step by steady step, guided by the courage she had found and by the memory of a kind stranger who had stood by her side. If only for one night.